Welcome to 10-Minute Product Management. My name is Nilaus. Today we're going to talk about an introduction to Scaled Agile Framework. This is version 4.5 of the Scaled Agile Framework. This picture here may be a bit confusing, but I hope that I can break it down and make it more consistent in 10 to 15 minutes. So without further ado, let's dive into it. Okay, let's start with the beginning. We have someone who needs something. This could be from the business, from IT, but they are someone who need it. We call that a product owner. So we have a product owner, they want something. What is it they want? Well, if they want to deliver something from an IT perspective, let's put a development team together, consisting in this case of 3 to 7 developers with cross-functional competencies, including testing. So they will be working together. However, maybe we need someone to facilitate the process, remove impediments for the team, and just keep the ball rolling. That is a Scrum Master, where they come in. So this is basically the normal Scrum team. You should, if you are familiar with Agile Scrum, this should be familiar to you. We are running here in a Scrum. We plan, we execute, we review, and we have retrospectives. The way the work comes into this team is from the product owner who is maintaining a product backlog. And their job is to make sure the product backlog consisting of user stories, they are the blue ones, and enablers, they are red ones. They can come from the team or from outside. They are basically performance or removing technical debt or any restructuring, refactoring, that kind of thing. That's how it's marked in the safe world. Blue is customer, red is internal. They call it enablers. So there we have it. This should be very familiar if you're familiar with Scrum. And we are now ready, looking at the team level, we are ready to start working in delivering user stories, delivering enablers. They are going to use into sprints. There will of course be more user stories enabled developed each sprint, but time does not permit to have any more space here. This is the team level. Everything should be familiar. All the mechanisms of Agile are here. We are making sure that we build in quality. And now comes the next step. So before we move up to the next step, we should ask ourselves, when should we do this? And the very short answer to when should you scale, or you shouldn't, don't scale. Don't scale unless you absolutely have to. This Scrum team is incredibly efficient and resilient and can deliver really, really good results. So don't start adding more overhead and more facilitation unless you absolutely have to. But in the case where you need it, because the product is simply too big that one team cannot work on it, or you have several different components or several different parts of a solution, not components, because we don't want to build component teams, but several different parts of a bigger solution that needs to be working together, highly dependent, then we need something else. And in order for us to figure out what we need, well, the product owners need to make sure that they don't build their own little part of the world, but they work together to build a greater whole. In order to facilitate that role on a program level, we have a product manager who works with business owners and identifies what needs to be built. At this point, since this is a bigger scope, they are not dealing with user stories or enablers per se. They are not since it's business, they're not dealing with user stories. They're dealing with features. This is an important distinction because a user story can be quite abstract for the interaction with the business, because although a user story should deliver tangible value at the end, that tangible value can be honestly quite intangible because the user story is quite small. While at a feature level, it's much more tangible to explain and understand what this is about. Let's say an example, the business owner says, I want a web shop on my website. Fine, that's a feature, but it's a hell of a lot bigger than a user story. It can consist of 10, 20, however many user story it then gets broken into. But that's where the team comes in, and they can then take a feature and break it into user stories and deliver the user stories. But in and of themselves, the user stories do not deliver the value. It's only when the entire feature is there. Yes, you can validate a credit card. That doesn't give us value unless it's tied in with the rest of the work of the web shop. Now the product manager needs help making sure that from a technical perspective, things are tying well together. So this is where the system architect or system engineer comes into the picture. He or she is responsible for making sure that the teams are developing things, the parts they build actually tie well together and they perform well, the scalability, also other concerns such as what technologies to use, what code standards, all those things are part of the domain of the system engineer and architect. Now that's starting to be a lot of people. Actually, it's going to be between 5 or 10 Scrum teams working together, so will be a lot of coordination. Those Scrum Masters will need somewhere to vet it. You could say, well, that's just a Scrum Master for Scrum Masters, but in the context of SAFe, they actually have a wider role, and it's called the Release Train Engineer. The Release Train Engineer is the one who runs the release train and the Agile release train, which is what we're building at a program level, consisting of these, let's say, 5 to 10, 5 to 12 Scrum teams working on a common service system product. Now again, similarly to at the other level, the lower level, we have a backlog. This is managed. The blue ones are managed by the product manager, the red ones by the system architect, and they are here. This point, they are bigger, they are features, and they need to be prioritized. This is used. There are different ways of doing it, but there's a proposal here. So now we know what features we would like to do, but a feature is bigger than a user story. So we can't deliver this on a 2-week cycle. What we need instead is having a bigger cycle where we deliver bigger features, and that's called a program increment. So a program increment is recommended as 10 weeks, where each sprint is on a 2-week cycle, or iteration is called here. So now we have several different teams. What is really important is that they develop on cadence. That means the length of the sprints must be the same. They must start and end at the same time. This is important because the program increment needs to start and end at the same time, because there are some events. There are 4 build sprints and then 1 sprint called an innovation and planning sprint. This is where there's time to look at new technologies, new methodologies. Maybe someone needs to go on a course. This is a good time to do it. Get some additional training. Also looking at planning for the next increment. If we do not have this dedicated time, we will be spending 5 sprints on build. It's going to be awesome. We're going to build it, except what are we going to do next week when we start up? Well, unfortunately, we haven't spent the time on preparing what features to build, how to break it down to user stories, and then we don't have time to build it. So that's why we have the planning, the innovation and planning sprint dedicated to innovation and planning. Now, this whole process is the realm of the release train engineer. They're the ones facilitating this transition, this process, and they do it through a number of different ways. So the product backlog, or the feature backlog here, is presented at a planning event, program increment planning event. This is where, hold on to your horses, this is where you bring everyone in together if at all possible. Yes, it's going to be expensive to fly people in conference rooms and all that stuff for several days and party in the evening. Yes, that's important. But it is a visible cost that contradicts the invisible cost of poor coordination. The event is there so that the senior management can come in and talk to all the people building this at one time. They get the same message once. And what happens is the features are presented, the teams take the features, break them down into user stories, and start planning them, start negotiating between the teams about who can take which user stories. This is because there may be competencies in some teams that are not in all teams, such as network, security, UX, database. There are different, we don't want a UX team, a database team, definitely not. They want to be as cross-functional as possible, but we don't have a UX engineer in each team, a database administrator, a security expert in each team. So there are teams that are better suited to different user stories. So they negotiated. The whole point of this is that we have now 100 people working together, building the plan by themselves, more or less, with a bit of help, which means by the end of the 2-day planning session, they will be committed to the plan because they've chosen to do it. They've been breaking it down. It's not a mandate from the top. The mandate from the top is, we think this is most important, please take this first. But the team actually takes in what they can do and not takes in what someone higher up wants them to do. So that's where it is. But please be mindful that this does not mean that you only get features every 10 weeks. No. Very big part of this is the adoption and integration of DevOps principles. So the whole Agile release train is going through the is using these features so that we can enable us to release on demand. We need to have continuous exploration. The product manager, system architect need to continuously investigate what's going on to prepare for the next increment. We need to continuously integrate. The teams are working. We can't have teams working 9 or 10 weeks by themselves and thereby after that committing code into a common repository, and there is no way that's going to work. They need to continuously integrate into the same code base so that anyone everywhere can use the features as they're being built, and any misses or constraints can be identified early and often. Of course, also continuous deployment. We need to get these features tested and done and put into production and then released with toggle switches on demand when needed. That is that part. So at this point, we have an agile release train consisting of 50 to 125 people. They are a stable organization. It's not a project organization that's getting built and running for 10 weeks and then gets destroyed. No, this is a stable organization that is meant to endure over time with smaller changes. When you need to make changes, do it at the planning, the PI planning event, so that an increment is as stable as possible. Now, let's look at the portfolio level. So we have an organization that may have 2, 5, 10, however many agile release trains running. And this is where there's a need for coordination between the enterprise. They have strategic themes such as expansion into China, or new production plant in the US, or cost reduction in Europe, or whatever it could be. And they need to be converted into something that can be actually delivered. We have the same trifecta at this level, slightly different, but we have epic owners. They could be business unit directors who are responsible for these strategic themes. We have enterprise architecture, which is responsible for the overall architecture of the entire enterprise, obviously. And then we have the lean portfolio management. They serve a role similar to a project management office in the sense that they are managing budgets and initiatives. We do not have projects here. We have several different release trains, and the money is allocated towards the release trains and what they do. Here we again have a backlog. The backlog is now consisting of epics. They are much bigger, and they will then be broken down into features in order to deliver this, and the features will at the program level be broken into user stories for the teams. Now, the way the budget is working is that it goes by value stream, the core value streams of the business. They are very stable and do not change over time, where there will be new epics such as cost reduction or geographic expansions. It can also be enablers at an epic level, such as the replacement of legacy systems which underlie the entire infrastructure, IT infrastructure, which is blocking future expansion or innovation. So definitely there can be also epics or enablers at epic size. They are going to be managed by the lean portfolio management, how and when and where money is allocated, and that gets shoved down into the respective agile release trains, and so on and so forth. So what you can see is, if we go back to the original picture, boom, there we have it. I have covered most of it, but not all of it. There are the things on the left and at the bottom that I have not covered, but time did not really permit it. So I hope that this has given you a somewhat good explanation of what the concept of scaled agile framework is, as much as could be possible in 15 minutes. If you find this interesting, be sure to like this video, share your comments. If there's something you don't understand, something you would like me to go into more detail of, some questions you have, some concerns. If you have ideas for future videos of this kind, either within the SAFe framework, within the SAFe world, or at other product management topics, then also let me know in the comments below. If you find this useful for anyone else, then I hope that you will share it so that more people can see this work that's been done. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you another time. Bye.